Hello and welcome to an all-new episode of the Bitcoin News Show right here on the CryptoCast Network. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, again for joining us live on this Sunday. And if you haven't joined us live, we definitely appreciate the view. Anyway, if you guys could give us a share and a shout. If you guys are new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. Otherwise, we are sharing the links on our website, cryptocast.network. We have our YouTube link, Twitter link, Instagram, iTunes, and RSS. We also have some merchandise on there if you guys want to grab that to support the show. And of course, we are displaying our QR code as this is a community-supported YouTube channel. And we hope that you guys are loving the content. We really, really appreciate all the donations that we have been getting. And of course, we are still doing our Programming with Bitcoin.com interactive two-day workshop. We'll be teaching C# developers how to work with Bitcoin, and that'll be taught by the creator of the library himself, Mr. Nicolas Doye. And we're going to be taking this around the country. So coming up, we got our next date on San Francisco, October 13th, and Seattle, November 3rd. All right, guys, with that aside, let's go ahead and get into your quick bit section. Before we introduce our amazing panelists today, we have a lot to talk about. So let's get into it here. So for the quick bits, we have first up, we have New York's virtual markets, the New York's Virtual Markets Integrity Initiative has released their latest report, and there are a few surprising things found. So that is pretty interesting, guys. Check that out. Make sure you see all the links to the show notes, to the quick bits, and to the panelists here in the show notes and the show description. Another note here: a cafe in Switzerland has become the first in the world to release a self-service shop, which allows customers to order menu items using Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. So that's pretty cool, guys. Again, one of those self-serving shops, but instead of using a credit card, you can use Lightning Network and pay instantly. The cryptocurrency wallet Samourai Wallet has ruffled a few feathers this week, guys. They have released an update which removes the fiat currency balances in a move. It says to stop users, using Bitcoin with a crutch, right? With a crutch, quote unquote. And to me personally, I don't know if I see it as a crutch, but I definitely love measuring my Bitcoin wealth in Satoshis rather than dollars. So this is a pretty bold move. I'm glad that they did it, and I hope that more and more people do it. We have to eventually, guys, close the loop of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency. So here we go. Next story we have. The U.S. multinational financial services corporation, Fidelity, pretty big company, guys, Fidelity Investments plans to release details of its new cryptocurrency offerings before the end of the year. So again, more and more of these big Wall Street companies getting into Bitcoin. And Squire Mining Ltd has announced that Samsung is actually going to be their manufacturer for its new 10-nanometer ASIC chips. So again, guys, more and more competition for Bitmain and for everybody. There's just a whole lot of competition. We are going to the 10 nanometers right now. And then while Bitcoin critics claim that the cryptocurrency is too expensive to use for transactions, some people claimed that last year, right? Well, data from the Bank of America shows that traditional fiat transfers cost 6,000 times as much. So there was a $90,000 transfer done for $45 with a bank that could have been done for 75 cents with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin acting as a settlement network. We love it. Circle, I guess joining the stablecoin barrage today, guys. Circle announced that they released its new stablecoin this week, the USDC, which will begin trading on Circle's exchange immediately. The new stablecoin will be fully collateralized by US dollars at a 1-to-1 ratio. And of course, stablecoins, guys, they're all the rage, but they're really not that exciting. Just another form of the dollar. And then Google, guys, once again will allow advertising for regulated cryptocurrency exchanges in the United States and Japan starting from October. So remember, Google and Facebook, they started banning crypto ads back last year when it got to a lot of crazy ICOs and crazy ads, lots of scams. They have now both started allowing crypto ads again. And finally, Willy Woo, guys, our lovely Willy Woo, our resident chartist, one of my favorite chartists out there, and analysts out there. He did some recent highlights from Mr. Nick Carter. Mr. Nick Carter's talk at the Honey Badger conference. Really great talk. Nick has released the slides from that talk. I highly recommend everybody check that out and follow Nick Carter himself. That's Nick __ Carter. There's a couple of points here that he made on here, which is pretty interesting. He says that the average Bitcoin transaction is now $3,000, while the average credit card transaction is between $100 and $150. So that's interesting. And now one of my favorite points is it says Nick says we're only one order of magnitude away from surpassing Visa's throughput. So that's pretty interesting. And then finally, it says that Bitcoin just recently surpassed the gold OTC settlement markets. So again, Bitcoin just slowly making its way up there, slowly but surely. We are getting there. So with that aside, guys, again, you can check out the quick bits section in the notes below, and all of the links in the notes below. With that aside, let's go ahead and introduce our amazing panelists today. We got a lot to talk about, guys. So let's get right into it. We got Mr. Francis Pulio. Francis joining us again from Satoshi's Portal. Francis, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Vortex. Thanks for having me again, and it was great seeing you in Riga.
Yeah, man, we're both kind of still recovering a little bit. Maybe we'll go into a little bit of our descriptions there. I do want to maybe just get a 2-minute rant off from both of us to see what we thought about the actual conference. And again, I want to maybe do a little bit more of a retrospective, more of a deep dive into that with a few more people later on. So thanks again for joining us, Francis. And joining us once again, Mr. Stefan Livera, one of the greatest podcasters in the world for crypto and Bitcoin. Stefan, how you doing, man?
Well, thanks for having me back on. It's a pleasure to speak with you guys, and it has been an action-packed week. There's been a lot that's happened. It just seems like every week there's more stuff happening than the last. So
every week, man, there's a ton to unpack. But thankfully, we have smart and intelligent people like yourselves to help us get through this. So thanks again, Stefan, for joining us. Again, guys, check out his podcast, the Stefan Livera podcast. At this point, pretty much has interviewed pretty much anybody that matters in the podcast network, which means he has not interviewed me yet. So we will get going to the first topic here, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go. We got the Bitmain IPO prospectus has been filed. And this, of course, is the talk of the town. In the crypto world, we're all trying to figure out, is Bitmain going to fail? Is it going to fail? Well, it's hard to tell, of course, for that. But my opinion, of course, one day they definitely will fail. But let's pull back a little bit. Let's unpack this a little bit and get some opinions from the panelists. There was a bunch of numbers released, and we don't want to get into too many of the boring numbers and things like that, but we do want to get some of the opinions from these guys to see what they think about this. So, Stefan, let's go with you first on this. Maybe you can tell us what kind of stuck out at you from reading this prospectus, because we know that Bitmain is going to try to file their IPO over there in Hong Kong pretty soon. I think this November. So they're releasing more and more information for the investors. And so, Stefan, maybe you can tell us what you thought about this.
Yeah, a couple points. So I think what came out in some of the news coming up to this was potentially some misrepresentation about who was invested into Bitmain, right? So some of the stuff that one of the accounts, BTC King, was talking about, he was saying, look, Bitmain may not have been honest about which investors had come into Bitmain, such as Tencent or SoftBank or DST, Temasek, GIC. And that was one thing that kind of stuck out to me about this whole process. The other thing is just they have made a loss in Q2. Cryptocurrency is a risky business, but I think they have been so dominant for the years 2015 to 2017, as pretty much anyone who's kind of closely following this space will tell you. But it looks as though their dominance is waning. I think, now that said, it is still a big story. It will still be a big story in terms of how much money they're able to raise as part of this IPO. It will, in some sense, legitimize cryptocurrency as a legitimate business in the eyes of many people around the world. However, from a support of Bitcoin point of view, I think it's an interesting kind of position, because while they are responsible for a large percentage of the mining of Bitcoin, they are also at the same time participating in what some might call attacks on Bitcoin as well. So it's you can't just kind of come out and say, oh, they're terrible, but there are potential reasons to believe that their dominance is fading.
It is interesting because we have had a good amount of fear, I guess you could say, in the spreading throughout the crypto sphere in recent months, as more specifically in the beginning of the year, towards the end of last year, towards the beginning of this year. With Bitmain, there was some people out there in the community that were saying we need to change the proof of work algorithm, because we were so afraid that Bitmain would perhaps 51% or start censoring transactions or start doing all sorts of the myriad of bad things that you can do with that amount of hash power. And so it was interesting because there was many people in the space like myself that were telling people that, look, Bitmain can't be this large forever. You know, they don't exist in a vacuum, right? If they do have pretty awesome or amazing profits, more people will come in, and that's what we're kind of seeing. We're seeing more and more competition come into the space and sort of eat Bitmain's lunch. Now, it is a little bit too early. I mean, Bitmain is still, like you say, Stefan, like a pretty large company, and again, they still have, you know, lots of profits that they're using. But again, when we look at certain things that they're releasing, like we look at it's been almost 2 years since they've released a chip. We look at how much money they've spent on the last few failed fabrications of like $500 million or so, and then of course we look at their their cryptocurrency stash, which mostly consists of Bitcoin Cash, which of course has gone nothing but down. It is starting to see, okay, some of the cracks are starting to show, and like you say, Stefan, maybe their dominance is starting to wane. So let's get Francis's opinions on here. Francis, what do you think about this conversation so far? What Stefan said, you know, is Bitmain starting to wane, or is that what these numbers are showing us, or what do you think?
Well, I think what the numbers show is that Bitmain's profits are not what they appear to be to the community, and they have maybe less of a war chest that was previously believed. So one of the things that I'm interested in have a look at is a few, and I've been trying to read through the IPO prospectus. There's a lot of numbers there, and still after Stefan earlier told me where he found the statement of financial position, I still can't find the assets anywhere, because if you remember the first leaked photos that were leaked by BTC King, there was a specific slide where it showed how many Bitcoins they held, how many Bcash they held. And obviously a huge part of the losses was as a result of this trade that they did, which they were trading Bitcoin for Bcash. They were doing that in multiple ways. For instance, they first started to accept Bcash for payment, and there's no indication that they were selling the Bcash. And obviously they started to mine Bitcoin Cash, Bcash themselves, and they did accumulate, as we saw, a bunch of Bcash. Now in the latest numbers, I still haven't found how many Bcash versus Bitcoin that they're holding. A bunch of the places where I see are redacted. So, you know, I wouldn't be surprised to see that the losses might be actually the real, not on paper, the real actual losses might be even bigger. So, you know, Bitmain is kind of a weird company in my mind, because at the same time they democratized ASICs, and they were selling ASICs to the public. They were making it affordable for people to buy those really, you know, the market's highest performing machines online and get them via, you know, Amazon or something. You know, all the miners in Venezuela were mining Bitmain ASICs, presumably. So they did do a lot for Bitcoin, but the thing is, they made a crucial mistake of getting involved in the consensus and trying to spread this narrative that Bitcoin was a vote, and they created severe damage to Bitcoin from the inside. Although it could have been worse, and still today it could be worse what they could do, but they created a lot of ill will. And then their final mistake was to back this Bitcoin Cash fork, which is, you know, the most disruptive event in Bitcoin so far. And, you know, attacking one versus the other and engaging in all this kind of behavior. And I truly hope that the financial statements show that they got totally wrecked because of that. I would really like them to be completely and utterly wrecked just because of Bcash. And one thing that is in theory, you know, the miners that get wrecked, they'll get replaced by other miners because it's an open market, it's a free market, it's highly competitive. This is true, but this comes at a weird moment right now where mining is hugely unprofitable. I mean, it's never been less profitable, you know, to some degree to mine. The difficulty keeps increasing, the price, regardless of the price. So it's not the best time right now to be in the mining business. And the blockchain ICO hype hasn't finished. So my personal wish is, I don't wish ill on any Bitcoin company, and if there's like one company who I wish to not succeed that much, it's definitely Bitmain. And my concern is that this IPO might be a subsidy for them to kind of take the loss they did over Bcash and erase it and start over. And that there's not going to be any learning if that happens. You know, there's too much subsidy in this space. There's not enough pain. There's not enough companies going out of business. So that's what I hope happens. And you know, regarding is Bitmain falling behind? Well, they're announcing some new hardware. At a certain degree, you can't have this monopoly position and not, you know, innovate a little bit. But certainly there are a lot more mining manufacturers out there, and there's a lot bigger operators. And some of the big mining farms that I know that are running Bitmain hardware are mining in their own pools now or other pools. So if you compare today with maybe 2 years ago, I mean, Bitmain's position is definitely less dominant. However, that doesn't mean that mining is more decentralized just because Bitmain's position is less dominant. One of the things about mining that I've been noticing is that the hash rate keeps increasing regardless of price. This kind of worries me because it should come back to an equilibrium at some point. So if it doesn't, that means that there's either the mining economics are really, really slow and really long-term, and people have a really long-term view, which would be great. But a thing that would not be good is that people are getting some other payoff from having hash rate, which is not directly the block reward and the revenue from transaction fees. So yeah, that's pretty much this on that. I mean, I still have to read the whole prospectus, but for sure it doesn't look good for Bitmain. And for sure, it seems like from the pitch deck to the first data that I've read, the picture is far less rosy than they let on their early pre-IPO investors believe.
Exactly. And we don't want to like pop the champagne too early, guys. Well, again, all of this vitriol and hatred, towards Bitmain, of course, is 100% well deserved. You could call us mean, right? But this is the free market. This is what happens when you go against consensus. And this is essentially what Bitmain did last year with the 2x fork and things like that, with the split off of into BCH. I mean, remember, Jihan had a whole different attitude, guys, a couple of years ago. It was fork your mother if you want to fork, and now it's like, hey, everybody, let's hold hands and sing Kumbaya. There is a whole different narrative now coming out of there. And again, if you're going to upset consensus like that, if you're going to go against consensus in this type of network that is Bitcoin, in these types of new types of cryptocurrency networks, you will be punished. And at this point, from what I'm seeing, is that there is just a huge amount of competition that's coming Bitmain's way. I want to read off a few numbers before I get into that. But basically, only 3.3% of the revenue is coming from them actually self-mining, so their own mining farms. That's only like 3% of the revenue. The vast majority of the revenue actually comes from selling their hardware. So if they can't sell their hardware, they go under. If they can't compete, they're going to go under. And remember, they lost their main chip designer. They've had 3 or 4 destroyed fabs already. They have not had a successful tape out in almost a couple of years when it comes to Bitcoin. So that is a huge loss. And it says here that they had almost a $400 million net loss in 2018 quarter 2. So they're losing millions like crazy. And again, this is not even counting the amount of money that BCH has gone down in. Because remember, on their prospectus, they still count their holdings of BCH, which is their vast majority of holdings. They still count that as the price that they actually originally bought it at, and it's really shady how they have it in there. They say, and again, so a big thing to take away here is that remember that they did lose their main chip designer. They are sitting on a huge amount of inventory that they can't sell because it's too old. And they are, if you look at their statistics, they're behind in every single category. So they're behind in crypto, they can't compete. They're behind in artificial intelligence, they can't compete. If you look at their products versus the market, the rest of the market, they are all of them inferior. And so, and here's something from TechCrunch. What they said is really interesting. They said that Bitmain did not break out its revenue for Q1 and Q2 in 2018 in its prospectus. Instead, it blended them together with a nice looking figure, for the first 6 months of the year. And so I just have to think that the amount of practices that they have, when you talk to other miners and other manufacturers in the space, you can see that Bitmain, they will tell you that Bitmain has played dirty for years in the space on every front that you can think of, from manufacturing and processing to IP to everything you can think of. And so, in my opinion, personally, people they kind of give Bitmain some props about how big they got, right? Like how much profit they made, and sure, that's all well and good. But look, in my opinion, almost all of Jihan's success, almost all of Bitmain's success is simply due to the fact of the crypto boom. Is simply due to the fact that the entire crypto space just went crazy, went haywire in price, and that is what they were riding their coattails on. That's what they were riding on. It was not from actual, really good chips. It was not from timing. It was not from skill. It was just pure timing in this particular market, and that's what I think where they got most of their actual profits from. And you can't really compete in that space when you're in a bear market like we see here. So with that aside, I think we can move on to the next topic, unless anybody else has anything to say. Francis or Stefan, any comments on that at all?
One more
Please.
last thing just to add is just that keep in mind that as you're viewing this prospectus, their Bcash is going to be valued at cost. Understand then that Bcash has fallen a lot since then, right? It might have been like 2000 then, and now it's around like 400 or 500. So keep that in mind. Expect that really the true valuation, the current valuation at today's prices would be much lower. So keep that in mind as well when you're looking through that prospectus, just for you guys in the audience. And lastly, also just consider that it's not as liquid a market as Bitcoin is. So consider that also, that even if they wanted to try and dump or sell all their coins at 400 or 500, they couldn't. There wouldn't be enough people wanting to buy it. So that's probably my,
Absolutely. I mean, if they even sold like what, Stefan, like what, 1.5% to 3%, I mean, I think they'd crash it down to near zero.
Yeah, I mean, they're holding such a large amount of the supply. It's ridiculous.
Yep, absolutely. So I think the last we heard, they were holding over 1 million BCH, and I'm not sure they claim to have held other things too, like Dash and BTC and things. But if you look, the last stats that I saw, like the pie charts that I saw, was the vast majority was BCH. And again, guys, that's an illiquid market. They're counting it as their freaking asset when it was just something that they printed out of thin air. Again, I like to say that this is pretty much the equivalent of Chuck E. Cheese printing Chuck E. Cheese tokens and then putting that on their balance sheet, saying that, hey guys, this is actually worth something. So that's a little strange. Francis, did you have something there?
Yeah, three things. So the first is, if you're going to invest in Bitmain IPO, you're investing in Bcash for the reasons that Stefan outlined. So they cannot sell them and make a loss. They're going to be hoping for a next bubble, which is inevitably going to come, and all the altcoins will go up. So you'll be investing in them, not selling. You'll be providing fiat for them not to have to sell their Bcash, and they are mining and holding, and they're getting payment in it. So for sure, they're holding a big stash. It's kind of like almost like a Bcash ETF at this point, or Bcash index to invest in Bitmain. The second thing is, just to be clear, they didn't just go on the Bcash chain. Jihan personally himself created Bcash. When we did UASF, he got super triggered. People remember he posted that photo of the Jonestown massacre with UASF on it. And then he said, if you're going to do your UASF, I'm going to do my UAHF, user activated hard fork. And then he paid a bunch of devs to do Bitcoin ABC, and then that became Bcash. So he was the guy behind Bcash entirely. Him and Roger and others joined it afterwards. So that's totally his mess. The last thing is, Bitmain got its position from having a huge improvement over the current efficiency of a miner. So if you look at the hash rate, there's been two major periods of increase. One of them was at the invention of the ASIC itself, and then the other one was at the release of the S9. The release of the S9 sparked an exponential increase in hash rate. What you'll see now is that the S9 is like the 5th or 6th most efficient miner on the market. Actually, the new ASIC on T2, the predecessor of which was the Dragon Mini Halong, that is like 30%, I think, more efficient than an S9. That's already a big bump. So they're gonna have to do it like a really the next one who's gonna really take the lead is gonna have to do a really massive increase in efficiency. And Bitmain's not gonna pull it off twice, right? They're gonna catch up, and they're gonna be able to catch up eventually to all the other competitors. But I really doubt at this point that they can pull off like a miraculous invention that's gonna completely revolutionize the hash rate distribution like they did for the S9. So just because it did it in the past does not at all mean that they can do it in the future. Of course, they were good, but as you said, Vortex, a lot of it was luck. Not luck. A lot of it was foresight and timing. But that's something that you can only have, once or twice, right? Because other people have foresight and timing as well. And it's not scarce.
Exactly. And of course, their main chip designer is gone, guys. Like, they've had 3 or 4 failed runs. And Shenma, the guy who left, started the mining company Shenma. I believe that his 16 nanometer chips are running like way, like 30% faster than I think, we'll see, what is it? Might have than the S9, because the S9, I forget what nanometer the S9 is, but I can tell you that Shenma's 16 nanometer chip was running 30% faster than Bitmain's 16 nanometer chip. So imagine what happens when Shenma starts rolling out some 10 nanometer chips. I mean, my God, it's going to set off a whole nother race again. And again, guys, I just don't see Bitmain competing unless they somehow came up with some new chip manufacturer that nobody's ever heard of. That's just some guy, golden boy, that came out of nowhere. I mean, that's really like the only thing that's going to save them. And again, we're still in the bear market. We're not due for a bull market to say these guys, if they're looking for a bull market to save them, I mean, that's months and months away. I mean, at the earliest, it would probably be this fall or next summer, because that's pretty much how the cycles in Bitcoin work, and it's going to be a long winter for those that did not prepare. And again, personally, Francis, I think that one of the main reasons that the hash rate continues to go up, or at least goes up a little bit by little bit all the time, even in this bear market, is because I do believe that there is a good amount of miners out there that did prepare for this winter, that did prepare, and that do see the future. And I think it's a combination of two things. One, the previous bunch of the previous miner generations preparing and seeing the future and being prepared for this bear market. And two, the rest of the world waking up, because look how early it is still, Francis. I mean, 1 to 2% of the people on the planet really know about Bitcoin, and we have a huge arms race still left to go. And it just can't help but think that there's a couple billionaires or a couple hundred millionaires out there just in the world that are willing to take a loss on this stuff right now. And I just think that it's more and more people are coming to aware. Again, it's all on CNBC every day. These millionaires, these 100 millionaires, these high net worth individuals are waking up to Bitcoin. And if some of them want to, some of them want to just invest and buy, and that's fine. But some of them, I think, want to really start taking a chunk of the mining market. And that's still doable this early. So, you never quite know.
I just want to say you're correct in that, because I did see a lot of the big investors in the mining space and big miners that are holding the Bitcoin. So they made a long-term investment to have a constant acquisition of Bitcoin. And it's usually players that want to take a big dominant position in Bitcoin, that want to enter this space, instinctively gravitate towards mining as a first step. It's because the ROI is more easy to understand and that kind of stuff. And the last thing I want to say is also regarding Bitmain. They did produce a lot of inventory, and unlike other mining hardware companies that sometimes will like take orders in a passive way, like waiting for big buyers to come and kind of making orders, Bitmain did like create a huge amount of S9s, and they flooded the market. And one of the good ways for them to offload that is to get really big mines that are taking a really, really big load of S9s. But some of these mines have become, big miners have become discontent with Bitmain. Some of them are even investing in their own chip manufacturing. And it's becoming harder and harder for big miners to get these really, really huge mines. It's much easier for a lot of miners to get smaller mines because they don't disrupt the electricity grid, and they can get those power connections that are becoming increasingly difficult to obtain. So the strategy of like offloading, like, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of S9 have yet to be offloaded into big bulks. That might also be a factor to factor in, regarding Bitmain's profitability going forward.
It's huge. It's huge. I mean, they have a boatload, guys, of S9s that they're not going to be able to sell. The market is just going to completely outcompete them. And that's a great point you made, Francis, about the electricity. I mean, we're getting to the point now, guys, where people are, big, huge miners that are going to start to come into the field are going to start buying up places to use electricity. I mean, that's forget just making sure that they can secure the hardware. No, now it's about making sure they can secure the electricity, and huge amounts of electricity. And Francis has seen this, of course, as people come into Canada and Quebec and various places around there. He's seen these people make these big deals, make these big acquisitions in order to secure the electricity for their mining. So this is the next stage that we're in. Basically, the next stage of mining is people are now starting to secure huge facets of electricity even before they even starting to order the hardware. So very interesting point, guys. This is where we are in the mining, guys. We're starting to get into the next phase. There's more and more to come, and of course we still have a few decades before we're going to sub 1 Bitcoin reward pays out. So we have a lot to go. Francis, I think you have one last comment. Go ahead.
Just to reiterate really quickly on what you said. So as I believe is the case right now, and it's going to be the case going forward, the efficiency gain of switching from one hardware to another is not as big right now as the efficiency gain of getting to a better jurisdiction. So like you can cut your power rates by like a factor of 2 just by moving your mine from place A to place B. And these places where you have cheap electricity are going to be where the competition is. So before, the competition was the number of joules per hash that you were able to pull off. But now I think increasingly, as the competitive advantage of the hardware becomes lower and lower, the electricity is really going to be, the availability and the price of it is going to be the way that the miners compete with each other.
Absolutely. Okay. I think that topic is done. Thanks again so much, guys, for joining us for this topic. We really, really appreciate it. If you guys are new to the show, please, we ask that you hit the subscribe button. And if you guys like the show, then go ahead and give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate it, as that gets us into more and more people's feeds. And if you guys are listening to us on the audio feed, we would very much appreciate a review in iTunes. So thank you so much for that. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. Oh, yeah. And I guess we have now enabled the super chat. So you guys can go ahead and ask those as well. So that's pretty cool. So let's get into our second topic of the day, ladies and gentlemen, the Bitcoin bug disclosure. So now, okay, none of us guys on the panel are, of course, protocol developers, but we still, of course, follow the space with a large amount of passion and a great amount of interest. So we will continue to comment. We've read a lot of stuff here. I know I definitely have. Jimmy Song, of course, has made an amazing article. Really recommend you guys check out Jimmy Song's article. I mean, he went back to years ago to try to get all this information. He asked core developers, went into IRC chat rooms, you name it, in order to dig up all the information needed for this article. So highly recommend everybody check that out. Of course, that link is in the show notes below. So let's go ahead and talk about this, guys. So this is the big bug that's going around, people talking about. Even at the Honey Badger conference, there was some talk about it. People were able to ask some of the core developers there directly some of the questions. I highly recommend you guys check out the Honey Badger live feed. That was great. 2 days of live feed on their website or on their YouTube channel. You guys can see. I think Matt Corello commented. Jamison Lopp commented. Adam Back. A bunch of people on there. So I highly recommend check that out. But this is the bug we're referring to is the CVE 2018-17144 bug. And we don't want to get into too much of the technicals, but I kind of want to get into a little bit of the 10,000 foot view and get from what you guys think about this. Now, this particular bug was originally sort of started way back in September 18th, way back in in like the 0.14 days, actually, a couple of years ago is when the start of this bug actually started happening. And so we'll go with Stefan first and get your thoughts. So let me ask you, Stefan, what are your thoughts about this bug? I mean, do you think that this bug is indicative of more to come, or was this bug handled properly and disclosed properly? Like, what is your comments on how this came to be, and should we be worried for more of these like these in the future?
Well, look, I think it's been a bit of a shock for everyone, because many of us who are in the Bitcoin community would rightfully say, yes, the Bitcoin cause review process is stronger and better than the some of the other coins. Now, in fairness, there were a couple things that we should note about this. So one is that it's unlikely that this bug would have been exploited, and in order to exploit it, you had to be a miner, and then there were certain conditions that in order to be able to do this kind of inflationary bug. And as Matt Corello pointed out in his interview with Marty Bent, that it was pretty obvious which chain was the correct one. It's not that people would have just carried on with the inflationary chain. They would have likely reorganized back to the non-inflationary chain. Now, speaking more broadly about it, it was a bit of a wake-up call for everyone. And it really, I think the comment from most of the developers really is that we just need more eyes on the code. So what we ultimately need is more developers who are skilled enough and diligent enough to go through and do that review. And I think this is something, to take a positive spin on it. It can also just mean that, well, now we're going to be more vigilant. We're going to be more careful about these sorts of things, and it's going to perhaps spawn more efforts to try and train more developers. So you can see that there's a lot of work that, so as Vortex, you train developers in terms of application development. You've got guys like Jimmy Song who are doing more like protocol, teaching people how to, understand and develop on the protocol. So I think that is the focus, and that's the way we're just going to have to go forward with this. And on the question of will it be the last bug? No, it's not going to be the last bug. There will be bugs, but I think all things said and done, this one was relatively well responded to. It was quite quick. Most of the mining hash rate had been upgraded, or at least the majority of the hash rate has been upgraded, although obviously the nodes, the perspective from the nodes is not quite there yet, but that's improving over time. And I anticipate that, that will just take some time. Yeah, but on the whole, I'll just sort of summarize it and say it's going to spawn, or it's going to induce more effort around developer education and code review.
Yep, absolutely. Great comments. Stefan, Francis, do you have a couple comments on this?
Yeah, I have a couple comments on this. I'm pretty concerned about this bug, to be honest. Maybe not so optimistic. Actually, I was lucky enough to meet Matt Corallo on the first night I got there, and we kind of talked about the bug, and he's like, "Oh well, it was kind of me who introduced it in it." So he had just spent like a week, awake, fixing that and working very hard on that. So the first thing that worries me is that only 7% of the nodes have upgraded. And that's kind of in line with my talk that I did at the Baltic Honey Badger conference, where I kind of gave out my theory that a very, very small minority of nodes are actually running Bitcoin for the incredible majority of startups, and in turn, almost the near unanimity of all the Bitcoin users are being run by these node operators. And the fact that only 7% of the nodes have upgraded is definitely worrying, because the 93% are still vulnerable. And I'll talk about a little bit later, like it is a vulnerability, and they're subject to attack right now. And either they don't know, which means that and we don't have the built-in Bitcoin protocol alert message, which was removed for good reasons. But it seems like Twitter and Reddit and the mailing list is not enough to reach all the node operators. Or what it means is that all the other node operators aren't really using the nodes. They're kind of running the nodes, and they don't really care because they're validating using other sources like block explorers or APIs. So this may reflect one or two things. Two, Bitcoin's ability to upgrade when there's a security fix is not good, and there's a lot of efforts that need to be done there. Either that, or combination of both, but either that or people are just not running nodes, and they don't care because they're not running nodes and they're not using nodes to validate anything. And as long as mycelium's patched, and whichever Electrum server you're connecting to is patched, as long as Coinbase is patched, you're fine. Which I suspect is more likely to be the case. So yeah, not good. You can check out the upgrade progress of Bitcoin Core's 0.16.3. It's actually the fourth most popular client. It's really far behind. There's only 6,000 upgraded nodes out of something like maybe 100,000 of all the nodes that are private and public, according to Luke Jr.'s stuff. So this bug is really it's a big failure of many things. So I think a lot of people trusted the Bitcoin Core review process, but if we're being totally honest to ourselves, we also trust a lot the Bitcoin Core developers that are implementing this process. And I think maybe we trust them so much that when they do a review and it passes a review, people don't really question that review process. So for example, if you look at the review process, I mean, it was ticked off as having been reviewed, but it wasn't a full review. So definitely a little bit of self-awareness to be had there. It's like, are we really trusting the process, or are we trusting the people, or both? And if we're trusting the people, then that's not necessarily a good thing, and we should make the process more robust. As Stefan said, I'm confident that this will incite a lot more people to go find bugs, if not for their fame as the ones who proved that Bitcoin Core was buggy. Obviously, whoever claimed, I think it may have not been true, but whoever claimed this bug was definitely proud and bragging about it. So so it's also worrying because even though there's not like going to be permanent damage to Bitcoin, there can be a lot of damage. And this bug was exploited on the testnet. Like yesterday, our node went down, and we just received this bad block notice, and we're like, holy shit, like we forgot to update the testnet node, and like I was testing a new feature on my app on testnet and it didn't work, and it actually the bug was executed there. I don't think executing the bug is costly, because technically all you need to do is create a bad block according to the bug specifications, and you'll crash a node. Like either, so what you do is you can create this block, you can feed it to the other nodes, and then some of the nodes will get it and just crash, and some of the other nodes that are updated will just reject it, and some of the other nodes that are not updated will accept it as valid, accepting an inflation of money. Obviously, no one's going to be like, oh, well, I accepted a bad block with inflation of money, and the rest of the network doesn't recognize this inflation of money, so I'm going to start an altcoin on this new chain that has the inflation of money in it. No, people are going to, see that the other peers aren't, accepting their block, and they're going to wait for another block. And then once they get a new block, they're going to be, oh, wow, okay, the other one was a bad block. This is now the new block. I know which one is the longest valid chain. And it would cost a lot of money to keep that up, right? To keep up feeding the bad blocks. But you could still do that a couple times a day and screw up everyone's nodes and make them shut down and have to resync, and make nodes wait and have a reorg. I don't want to give miners any ideas. I'm sure they already know that they can do this right now. So people need to upgrade like as soon as possible. I don't know how to make it go faster. I wish I knew. And another point that's kind of more of a meta point is, I've seen the Bitcoin core devs were not complacent. Like, I'm definitely not going to say that. That was really hard to spot. But in general, there is a complacency about like how Bitcoin won and how it's unbreakable and how it's censorship resistant. But it really is just these things because people run the full node software. If they don't, then it's not these things. It's just an empty slogan. And I'm also worried a little bit that Bitcoin has been under attacked, like attacked. It has not been attacked enough, because I'm seeing these things and I'm like, well, if I was the Bank of International Settlement, like I wouldn't just say, oh, Bitcoin won. We got screwed. Our whole system of world domination is now over because these geeks on Twitter like they won. No, I mean, people are still out there. I was saying to a few people, like I see some some daggers in the shadows, and this bug is exploitable. And I'm even more worried that no one's tried to exploit it now than actually someone having exploited it, because I'm like, why don't people exploit it? Seems like it's not so hard to do. So if someone does exploit it, I hope that node count of upgraded nodes goes to 95% real quick. And if it doesn't, if someone exploits it and it still doesn't, then we need to like focus all the energy we can on getting people to run their own nodes and not run, hosted nodes, because it's just going to confirm that we have a pretty big centralization of nodes problem.
Yep, and Nick Carter, of course, spoke about this in his talk, I believe, as well, where he said that the vast majority of transactions right now on chain, the vast majority of the transactions on chain are really pretty much between exchanges and wallet providers, known wallet providers like Coinbase to Zappo, Zappo to Coinbase, and so on. So that is really interesting. And of course, with your product CipherNode, hopefully, Francis, we can really maybe take back more of that power and stop using these centralized entities now that we have something as awesome as CipherNode. And hopefully, Francis, you'll be talking more about that in the coming days, in the coming weeks, with articles and videos. And of course, I'm going to have I'm going to have an interview with you as well, Francis, right here on this channel. We're going to be talking about his new project CipherNode from Satoshi Portal. So that's going to be really an important play. I guess what we're talking about, is the decentralization of Bitcoin, right? This is part of the trustlessness of Bitcoin, is what we're discussing here. And when we see bugs like this and not enough nodes upgrade, that is a little bit worrying, but I think that we just need to put a PSA out, remind people, hey, you guys need to upgrade your node as soon as possible. But I just want to say a couple things here about the bug itself. It says, this is supposedly basically both a denial of service. There's a denial of service component in it, as well as a critical inflation vulnerability, component in it. So there's a couple of different things in this particular bug, as it was sort of kind of like a dual thing where it was worked on in earlier days, a couple of years ago, then it was worked on again a little bit later to be refactored a little bit. And so I think it's worth noting that this is a pretty unique bug, Francis. Like, I think even Francis said, is he worried about Bitcoin developers becoming complacent? No, nothing like that, guys. This particular bug was really difficult to spot, and so of course, you know, the guy who did it, the guy who spotted it, of course, was bragging around the whole crypto Twitter sphere and things like that. But that's not how we. Of course, it was a BCH person, a core person would never do that. As we saw what happened when, for example, Corey Fields fixed a bug in BCH, he definitely did not act like that. He was much more responsible. And so again, this bug is going back to 0.14. The specific PR was PR 9049. And some libraries like LibBitcoin didn't actually have this problem. It was Bitcoin Core and a couple other ones based on Bitcoin Core. But like, for example, LibBitcoin, they didn't have this issue. But you know, Eric even said he didn't have a test for this yet. He didn't actually write a specific test case scenario for this issue. So he actually went ahead and wrote that. So there was, of course, something to be learned even from the people that didn't have this particular bug in their library. But it's also worth noting that there was so many things that sort of went wrong simultaneously with this bug. I mean, when they were about to you know, disclose it, the mailing list went down. There was just a couple of different little concurrent things that wouldn't have happened normally that actually all happened at once. And of course, this is how it happens, right? When it rains, it pours. That's just how it works. But again, this was a very unique bug, and I don't see this type of bug happening very easily again. Again, there is a whole lot of peer review that we do trust a lot in the Bitcoin Core processes, but we do wish that there was more automated tests, even though an automated test couldn't have fixed this one. I mean, it couldn't have found this one, but we do hope that there's lessons to be learned from this, that more people take a look at this. As we've continued to say, you know, there's just simply not enough eyeballs on this. I mean, there's a lot. Again, Bitcoin's code is probably more peer reviewed than any other code on the planet in the history of mankind, but still, it's not enough because this stuff is difficult. This stuff is hard. There is a very niche thing to do to be working on the protocol, especially at this level. This takes years and years and years of understanding. In fact, Chain Code Labs even says when they onboard new people to their residency, they don't even start contributing for a minimum of 6 months to a year before they actually have their first PR request. So, you know, it takes a long time to go through this stuff, but personally, I just want to say that personally, I'm not worried. I think that this bug was very unique. I think the core process still works, and I think there is still plenty of room for improvement. But most importantly, I think that we still need more people, guys. We need to scale Jimmy Song. We can't quite scale Jimmy Song, so we need more and more people teaching protocol development. Jimmy Song has an excellent course. You know, of course, my course is more for application development. It doesn't really teach you to work on problems like these, but still, there needs to be more education out there, and we hope that more and more people continue to make Bitcoin their life, continue to work on this, because it really you almost have to make crypto and Bitcoin your life to really work on this type of stuff. And again, like even Jimmy Song isn't worried. He says that he believes that this was not quite as severe as some people have made it out to be due to the difficulty and motivations it takes in actually exploiting the bug. Francis said that they apparently have already exploited it on testnet. So of course it can be, you know, it can be exploited. But again, it's you know, it's part of that beautiful network effects and game theory with Bitcoin, where why would you want to exploit something that's currently making you money, right? So it would have to be a very nefarious actor, something like the Bank of International Settlements, right? Something like that's lurking in the shadows. And as Francis said, believe them, they are lurking in the shadows. They are out there. But this is free open source development, guys. There's just so much. There's only so much you can do with the complexity of this type of code, and the people that are shepherding it, and they're taking control, and that are, you know, making sure that it continues to work. The people that are really working on this on a day-to-day basis. It's going to be pretty hard to fool those guys. So I just want to. That was my personal points. I really think that, again, guys, this isn't a super big problem. We need to upgrade our nodes as soon as possible. As Francis said, this does outline a couple things, like we need to be able to upgrade our nodes faster. We need to start using things like CipherNode instead of Bitcore or other centralized you know, hackery that we're reliant on other third parties for. Very important stuff, guys. So I think that's it for me. Does anybody else have any final points on this, Francis or Stefan? Anybody? No. All right.
Yeah. Maybe just to conclude, like, please. I don't think this is a failure of the development process so much as the Bitcoin Core devs cannot upgrade Bitcoin. They can release an upgrade patch to Bitcoin that people have to run. And this is the same thing for consensus changes. They can't force consensus changes. They cannot force updates. So Bitcoin is not patched like a very small minority of Bitcoin right now is patched, and the failure is not like more eyeballs will definitely help, but it's definitely a very, very small part of the problem to have more eyeballs on Bitcoin Core. Because if this bug gets spotted faster or something, or gets patched better, or it's always going to happen, right? So we can assume that there's always going to be a bug. So more eyeballs won't fix that. So the problem is, if there's a bug, how quick does it take for us to patch the network and not just patch the open source software? And regarding the intentions of miners, as I said, the mining hash rate has very diverged away from the price. Definitely, the current miners aren't making a huge profit. They might be holding Bitcoin. They might also be accumulating hash rate for other reasons. So the theory that a miner would not act against his own self-interest is good on paper, because all the payoffs are known. But if you have an unknown secret payoff, like, hurting Bitcoin is better for your business model than spending, $100 million on a tax, and it would cost much less to pull off. But it's small amounts. So for Bitcoin to be secure, the price needs to be much higher, and the hash rate needs to also keep going up. So right now, the price of Bitcoin is just not high enough for me to be confident in like it being secure, despite the nodes relatively being centralized. So let's definitely work on that node decentralization thing. Like, I can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah, guys, got to stay vigilant. Update your nodes. I mean, again, guys, if we can't patch our network, then what good is our network, guys? We have to be able to address this faster. We need to be able to update our nodes faster. Of course, all the main nodes have already upgraded, the Coinbases and the things like that, but that's not good enough, guys. If that's the only people that update, then that means that that's the only people that are running a node. And that's not a decentralized network. That's not a network that we really thought Bitcoin was, right? So this is definitely a PSA for everybody out there. Please update your node as soon as possible. This is going to be, this is going to, again, show, guys, just like UASF last year, how we showed that we weren't going to let the network being taken over. We ran our UASF nodes. Well, let's show that we can upgrade our network, guys, and let's upgrade our nodes. So great points, Francis. I think we can leave this topic now. If anybody else has anything, nope. Okay, cool. All right, guys, let's go to our final topic. Again, if you guys are liking the show, please, we ask that you hit the thumbs up. If you guys are new, hit the subscribe button. We're getting pretty high in the numbers. We're over 1,600 subscribers now. We really thank everybody for joining and subscribing to the network. The thing is growing, guys. We had a bit of a lapse there from the Honey Badger conference, but there will be more shows this week, I promise you, and can assure you that. We, of course, just released a new Bitcoin Matters with the great, powerful Beauty on. Really hope you guys check that out. That was a great episode. Really encourage that. So let's go ahead and go to our final topic of the day. Coinbase, again, guys, in the news, as usual. Coinbase, when are they pretty much not in the news? They have now a new bundle of cryptocurrencies that it's kind of rifling a few people's feathers, including my own. I really don't agree with this process of peddling these penny stocks, these horrible things onto people who have no idea, especially when they put them right up against Bitcoin. Bitcoin and then Bitcoin Cash. Well, they must be pretty similar, right, guys? They're right next to each other and they have similar logos. So let's ask Stefan. Stefan, what do you think about this this Coinbase bundle? Is this really is this Coinbase continuing to defraud their customers, or is this just a nice diversification into the crypto market?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're basically pointing it out there. Like, the problem is it's cargo cult finance, right? So this idea of, okay, it's like the whole reference to the cargo cult science and cargo cults is like this idea of, I think there were islands in the Pacific that were getting support from, the US, and that as the planes would come to land, they eventually thought, oh, the planes coming to land means we're getting more supplies, right? And then they tried to do other rituals, not understanding the overarching process, right? And so this whole Coinbase bundle is cargo cult finance. Reason being, they are trying to take things from the standard finance world, such as diversification, and apply them here in a case where it does not make sense. The real argument for Bitcoin is a monetary one. So what's happening is people commit a category error of thinking Bitcoin and all these cryptocurrencies are just like different stocks, and the way that you should invest is by diversifying across the different stocks. But the problem with that is that's not the argument for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not a stock. It doesn't generate an income. It is a potential money, right? And things compete to become the one best money, right? And there are strong tendencies towards one best, most liquid money that the whole market uses, or like 80% of the market uses. So it's a winner takes most, if not winner takes all market. So consequently, it's just basically scamming their customers and just dumping on retail to dump all of these trash coins onto them, like Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, Ethereum Classic, Ethereum. They're all just trash. What is the point? And I think it's almost like this is like, so Coinbase recently, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, they released a thing called Coinbase Index Fund, which again was another cargo cult finance, but that release was only applicable for accredited investors. It looks to me like this is basically them doing the same thing, but just dumping on retail. Sad.
Yeah, it's just it's pretty sad, guys. Look, we understand that that this is a winner take all game, and even if you don't believe that, right? Even if you believe in the utility theory out there, right? That the crypto that's going to win is going to be the one that's most used by people and things like that. It still doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have all of these altcoins in one single bundle, because as Stefan said, these are not companies, guys. These are not stocks. These are cryptocurrencies. These are monies. And yes, there's always going to be a bunch of different monies and a bunch of different penny stocks and a bunch of different crap coins. That's fine. That's okay. But you don't put them right next to the blue chip, right? You don't put freaking some penny stock that's almost worthless right next to Apple. You don't do that. People understand that there is a difference between these. These are different classes of assets. And so that's what's really, 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 I think, important to take away is that, again, even if you believe in the utility theory, these are entirely different classes of assets. When you're talking about Bitcoin here, which is literally trying to be the world's restorer of value, versus Ethereum Classic, what the hell? Right, some kind of platform coin that nobody's even using, that there's only a couple developers on, that's actually working on the protocol, that like basically a single investor is propping up, right? So just craziness to putting these things right next to each other. Francis, let's go with you on this. What do you think, Francis? Do you buy into this diversification in crypto, Francis, or is freaking Coinbase essentially just defrauding their customers and just dumping this crap on them without them knowing what it is?
No, I do not buy the diversification theory in crypto. I don't want to go over too much stuff on altcoins because, if you follow me on Twitter and you follow, a bunch of us, the arguments may vary, but they all lead to the same, same end, which is that because of the network effects of these communication protocols, which are money, and of this mental abstraction, which is money, there will only be one long term. And if there are many, it's simply because there's no competition between the dominant one and the lower ones. For example, if we go to outer space or something, it's going to be hard for the dominant money on Earth to compete with the money in space. But just like for language, if you remove the barriers, if you put 1,000 people on the spaceship, they will all speak English, and their kids will all speak English, and they won't speak their original languages 2 or 3 generations down. So the Coinbase bundle is like horrifying to me. It's really not a shock. It just adds to my general cynicism and disgust at the lack of ethics of this industry. And I've been kind of working hard to not be part of the blockchain industry anymore. And just the idea that I'm like part of the blockchain industry, it really repels me. And I've been really trying to isolate it. Like there's Bitcoin, and then there's the rest of the blockchain industry, and there's some place where ethics are important and values are important, and there's reason, and it's not about making a quick buck. And then there's the blockchain and ICO and whatever token economy industry. Like I learned about the fiat protocol theory like four months ago, and I was like, there's no fucking way like people believe and buy into this, right? And obviously, this turns out to be like the dominant investing philosophy of the 21st century. Like, oh my God, all the value is going to be in the protocol and none of it on the apps. It's going to be the opposite of the internet and anything that we know. Wow. And, these thought leaders, they're just having these brain farts like live on Twitter and on their blogs. And people just believe it. And then when it turns out to be wrong, they're like, oh, well, it's actually securities tokens, or it's actually stable coins, or it was never about, it's utility drives value, and then some other stuff. And then they're just experimenting, and they're making tons and tons of money. One thing that I've noticed by getting, more, I guess, say, outspoken on the altcoins is learning about all the insider shit that's going on there. Like, I try to not get too interested, but when I do, like, I go to full depth, and I know who's making money where, and it's just really bad stuff. So, what Coinbase is doing is this, it's legitimizing, it's like institutionalizing this idea that it's a new asset class, which is dumb. It's not a new asset class. There's like money, and there's like potentially these ways of moving around and settling existing rights like equity and profit. Like, all the other stuff is not a new asset class. It's just a Ponzi scheme, right? It's just a prepaid gift cards for future products that somehow are now traded on secondary markets and have prices. And since there's no actual redeemable product, there's no arbitrage happening, so nobody can price these things for real. But it's not a new asset class. It's just a new weird thing that should not exist, and that should just get cleared out. And like, Bitcoin is a new asset class. It's sound money. It's like, there's fiat money, there's equity, there's stocks and bonds, and then there's sound money, which is different from that. It's not even a new asset class. It's another component of the asset class of sound money, right next to gold. So bundling them together is like institutionalizing a narrative, that's very convenient for the peddlers of that, right? They don't want people to see Bitcoin as being separate from this other thing, because the whole premise is based on the idea of hedging against Bitcoin, that these are legitimate competitors to Bitcoin. It's like Bitcoin, but it's better because it's made specifically for IoT, and IoT is really hot right now. So yeah, just bad all around, and, to be expected, and it's just depressing, to be honest. There's nothing we can do. This is definitely going to sell like hot potatoes. It's like anybody can now, like, mom and pop. This is like designed for like kids, like for old people. It's like, oh, you can be a diversified investor in the new paradigm in like one click with your credit card. You can have all of these assets. You don't need to, it's so easy to get all these assets at once in a big bundle, in a big bagel. It's just prepared to like have like these liquidity, these high net worth investors just go through Coinbase to sell their bags. Like, why? Like, people are just going to go through GDAX and Coinbase and just sell their bags of diversified shitcoins to the retail investor through Coinbase as a middleman. So I don't know. In Bills and Bitcoin Outlet, we've never touched the altcoins. I'm very happy with it. And a side note is, I tweeted about this. This is definitely a real story. Like, I went to meet some Bitcoin devs at Honey Badger conference, and the way that Cipher works, like, we need to we just like aggregate other people's code, right, into one place. We don't build new code. So we're like, I'm looking to these devs and like, oh, you have like your code, your software product, which I really want in Cipher, but we're busy doing this and that. And I'm like, can you just like, have a look, maybe if you can integrate it, shouldn't be too hard. And then they're like, oh man, just the eyes go boom. And they're like, we'd love to, but we're integrating shitcoin X into our system. And we start discussing about that. And they're like, well, essentially, I don't want to dox anyone. Essentially, their competitors are doing that. And they would rather make money from sales, for example, than get venture capital. So they're like, well, we got to go where the money is. But I'm not sure that much that this is a good long-term play, because you're investing. You're not just getting revenues. Like, you're investing time. You're also investing Bitcoin opportunity costs in 2018, like, as a Bitcoin participant in the network. Like, how can you make decisions like that? Like, if you're there and like it's yours to lose, and then you intentionally just stop running the mile that you're running and just go in the playground for like 10 minutes. It makes no sense to me. And it's a free market. I'm not gonna, everybody's like making their own decision. Everybody's an adult, but people see Coinbase and these institutions as thought leaders, and they rightfully should in any industry. The biggest player whatever the biggest player does, you know, they must have all these analysis and all this stuff for them to get to that decision. So people instinctively think if they're making this decision, it's obviously a good one. They're like the biggest Bitcoin company. They know their stuff. So this is good. This is not good. This is just really bad. And yeah, I don't know what else to say.
There's not much. There's not much really you can say, friends. I mean, at this point, yeah, I guess I lost the sun there behind me. But anyway, it's crazy because these people remember what they want to do. They want to combine Bitcoin with everything else, right? They want to make sure that they do not separate Bitcoin in your minds, in your thinking, in your understanding, in everything, in the theories. They want to combine it all to make sure that you do not separate Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the key. Now, of course, there's always going to be penny stocks. There's always going to be altcoins. There's always going to be crap. That's fine. But remember, you have to separate it from Bitcoin, just like you have to separate gold from everything else, from tungsten, from copper, from everything. Gold is on another level. Like Bitcoin, this Bitcoin is on an entirely another level. It has a very, very specific use case, a very, very specific culture, a very, very specific development ethos. It is not on the same level as all of these other coins, not even close. And so what they do is they try to obfuscate, right? They try to combine them with things like Ethereum Classic and into these things, into these bundles. People are going to get wrecked, because here's what you have to understand. This is a big point. All of these assets, guys, they're all correlated. They're all correlated to Bitcoin. If Bitcoin's going up, the rest of this crap is going to go up anyway. If Bitcoin's going down, then the rest of this crap is going to go down. It makes zero sense to actually bundle anything in the crypto industry, because it's all backed by Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the only thing that matters in the crypto industry. It's the only thing with actual value, the only public decentralized blockchain at scale, the only thing that can actually retain value other than speculation. So that is why all the other coins tag along with it. People like to say, oh man, Litecoin, awesome. All of these other coins, awesome. Like Monero, awesome. But they all trail Bitcoin, and for good reason. Bitcoin has the vast majority of liquidity in it and the vast majority of the security. Bitcoin is the store of value and unit of count of the entire crypto space. So it's important to separate these guys, because people like Coinbase are going to continue to put them together. Coin market cap, they're going to continue to just put them right side by side, right next to each other, like they're the same damn thing. And you have to remember that that's not the case. Education, guys, is how we're going to really defeat this. Like Francis says, we can't tell Coinbase to stop doing this. It's a free market. Go ahead. But we can educate people and remind them why Bitcoin is different and unique, and why Bitcoin doesn't belong in these freaking bundles. Why? I mean, Nick Carter, guys, just again, to bring up Nick Carter, did an amazing talk at the Bitcoin Honey Badger conference about the market cap fallacy, essentially to not buy into these ridiculous market caps that Coin Market Cap says some of these tokens have. It's just insane, just super thin, razor thin margin, razor thin books. You couldn't sell it if you wanted to. There's no way that these market caps are any way accurate, and they should not be treated as such. They should not be treated as they are. So again, guys, just remember, all these assets are correlated. They're all off of Bitcoin. If Bitcoin moves, they're going to move anyway. Why not just hold Bitcoin and not all these crazy alts? Now, of course, these alts are going to do what alts do. They're going to do what penny stocks do, right? Which is they're going to shoot up way higher, in percentages than Bitcoin, and they're going to drop way higher in percentages than Bitcoin. So they are extremely volatile, extremely risky. And sure, if you want to go ahead, gamble away. Nobody's telling you not to do that. We're not here to make you money, but we are here to educate and tell you and remind you the difference between Bitcoin and these other altcoins, these other chains, these other playthings without any development whatsoever. We're here to tell you there's a difference. So before you go and buy some of these bundles, just remember, guys, that it's all correlated anyway, and Bitcoin is the only actual asset with value outside of speculation. So without that, does anybody anybody else have anything else to say with that aside? Okay, cool, guys.
Just a quick thing.
One thing. Go ahead.
Do you know if you can sell individual parts of the bundle? I don't think you can, right? I think it's more like a vehicle for holding the bundle.
I'm actually not sure. I know that once you buy the bundle, you can still sell it as a bundle, but I'm not sure once you buy the bundle if you can actually sell the individual assets once you buy that. Because if you could, I mean, that would be slightly better.
I would have to check. So I'm just gonna assume that you can't, because that's the only way that the bundle makes sense. Because otherwise, people will just buy them and sell them separately. But I don't know if you Oh yeah, Stefan.
So yeah, look, I'm just looking on the website now. It says, yeah, so it says after you purchase a Coinbase bundle, you can do blah, blah, blah. And you can buy, sell, send, and receive each digital currency as an individual asset.
Okay, so that's definitely a lot better. Yeah. Definitely a lot better, because otherwise you could just only exit for fiat and not for Bitcoin. But I don't know if you realize like the irony of the bundle and diversification idea, which is so like it's a paradox, because you're correct in saying that they are correlated to Bitcoin, and to the extent that they're correlated to Bitcoin, there's no diversification happening, other than if you believe that one of them will become the dominant global reserve currency, which is Bitcoin's, market, right? So even the coins themselves, which are not advertising them as currencies competing to Bitcoin, which they are, but even the coin themselves are fooling themselves into saying, no, we're not aiming to be a global standard reserve currency. We're aiming to be, a platform to upload files, and we have our native token. So for them to succeed, there's no other way in a world of open competition than to win the global currency position, because all of these platforms are like, oh, you can only use our platform or service if you use this specific coin, like BAT, for example, the BAT token. But even if you look at BAT, they're not even using their coin anymore. They're saying, oh, we'll accept USD, we'll accept Bitcoin. Like, they're not even enforcing their ban on other coins, which is the only thing that gives them value.
Even Bitmain eventually went back from Bitcoin Cash to accepting Bitcoin, right?
Right. So the only way this makes any sense is if one of them becomes the global store of value means of exchange over Bitcoin. So when you're buying that bundle, you're buying that whatever is in that bundle, there's going to be one, and Bitcoin's going to die, and that one's going to become the global leader. That's such a crazy claim. That's such a crazy idea. It's like you're already betting against, you're already betting on fiat collapse, and then you're betting on Bitcoin collapse, and betting on a Bitcoin collapse where a competitor that's completely dependent on the Bitcoin would rise to the top. It's like such a bad bet. It's such a huge long shot.
It's so paradoxical and counterintuitive. It's really insanity. And again, it can only be thought of by some of these Wall Street people who believe in this fat protocol theory and things like that.
It's like selling the most improbable, incredible long shot in financial history to retail investors and taking a fee. And ultimately, it's so much easier to say, hey, it's like Bitcoin, but instead of this problem, we have this feature. Like, oh, I understand Bitcoin. I'm a retail investor.
Every single coin is ever claimed in the history.
Of course, and they all have PhDs, don't they? They're all so smart. They're all like super experts, right? So, oh, I don't understand Bitcoin, but like I know it's cool. I know it's good because of all these things. It's lasted for 10 years. It's like still there. Wow. Okay, it's worth like $6,000. Wow. I believe in Bitcoin. And then this other guy comes along. Well, I'm an expert, and it's like Bitcoin, but there's this new thing. So it's like, oh, it's the value of Bitcoin plus the value of this new thing. Such an easy sales pitch, and it's so much easier to explain to someone than explaining why Bitcoin is better than fiat, right? So it's just true too. It's just so easy to sell this stuff. It's like it's stealing candy from a baby, and then everybody looks at you because you're at the top. You're doing the meetup and you're doing the speech, and everybody's a self-proclaimed expert on a panel now, and like you're the guy at the front, and nobody's calling you during the speech a scammer out loud, so you just believe it. So that's why it's important to call those people out in front of the other people, so that it's like a fake consensus of experts where the only people out of the consensus are like the Bitcoin maximalists, and they're just trying to make us look like crazy loons, like, climate change deniers or something like that. Like, oh, they're like crazy, something like that.
I just want to reiterate that point, Frets, one more time. I mean, that's just really great, because this is what we're seeing in the space, is that we're seeing people more easily explain why an altcoin is better than Bitcoin, because that is way easier to explain why Bitcoin is needed in the first place, why Bitcoin is better than fiat. Yeah. It's way easier to sell, guys. So you heard about this Bitcoin thing, right, on CNBC. Well, I got this thing that's worth almost as much, but it's going to be better. It's going to be worth more. And it's just way easier to explain that than to tell them, guess what, guys, the central banks have kind of part of this cartel that's been sort of ruling the earth for the past 1,000 years. Like, it's a little bit easier of a sell than to explain to them how central banking works.
Of course, and that's a direct consequence of fiat money having existed for using the subsidy of the future generation's wealth for all those years, because people see all sorts of currencies out there. Oh, well, there's euros and francs and US dollar, and it's a natural state for people's mind to have multiple currencies that are each like devaluing against the US dollar basically over time.
And each other.
So, and each other. So it's like the reference frame of mind is multiple currencies. And then the burden of proof is on us to say there should only be one. Whereas the real burden of proof is like, how can you justify the existence of multiple competing currencies in an open free market without time and space limitations with the internet? How do you justify this incredible claim? My claim that there should only be one and there will only be one is like the rational thing. Like yours is the incredible claim. So, you know, the burden of argument and proof in this situation is reversed, because it's so much easier like to just give your incredible claim because you have the evidence of the last like 70 years like backing it up that there's multiple monies, whereas my evidence is like 2,000 years and nobody knows about it because it's like forgotten history. So it's just like the whole thing is perfectly framed to sell the altcoin. It's just a perfect frame of reference for everyone. And then Bitcoin is so far removed. Like going into this Bitcoin maximalism is really hard. Takes a long time. Some people are intuitive at the beginning, but it definitely takes a long time to wrap your head around that. And I think, you know, Coinbase's bundle is just exploiting a temporarily hack and information asymmetry between the people and, you know, the truth. And it's just, I don't know. It's just
well, no, that's just great. No, it's a temporary asymmetrical hack. This is exactly what it is because people, they just don't understand. So we'll close it out, Francis. But
I could go on.
Great points, man. Great points. I just want to say a few things. First of all, guys, you know, with this Bitcoin maximalism thing, again, it's not about eschewing everything else, you know, and saying, oh, Bitcoin's going to be the only one. It's about looking at everything else and then realizing that Bitcoin is going to be the only one. I highly recommend everybody check out Giacomo's talk at the Honey Badger conference regarding Bitcoin maximalism. Absolutely fantastic talk. Great talk. Again, at the Honey Badger YouTube channel. I don't have that link in the show notes, but you guys can definitely find that. Just Google Honey Badger 2018 live stream. Really, really great. And then, again, guys, just going back to the shadiness of this particular Coinbase product, we've already talked a lot about it, but just a couple final things, which is that they also display something pretty shady on there where they say, hey, if you had bought this bundle 6 months ago, you would have been up as opposed to just buying Bitcoin. If you would have bought our bundle, oh man, you would have been okay. And that's why it's just, guys, you got to look at it. It's so shady. Very, very, very shady. As we always continue to say, buy and hodl Bitcoin. That's just the only thing you need to do. And again, another thing that kind of is maybe a sign of the times is Shapeshift's Prism, right? Eric Voorhees' company's called Prism. That company just recently shut down, which was the same thing where it allowed you to hold all of these different Ethereum assets, you know, in a prism in one single thing, so you can diversify your Ethereum assets. Now, of course, with all of those assets being down over 90+% and half of them not even being around anymore because they exit scammed, that company is no longer viable. And I do believe that this bundle will be no longer viable once again, once the market realizes the true difference between some of these altcoins and Bitcoin. So very, very great points, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. We really, really, really appreciate it. Everybody in the chat was having a good time. I did have to slow-mo the chat a little bit down to 15 seconds, but I think that's enough. People are still having a good conversation in there. We really appreciate it. And we actually now are supporting Super Chat. So we've now been have the ability to turn that on as well, so that we can hopefully help continue to you know, monetize this channel and give you guys more shows, give you guys more entertainment and more stuff about Bitcoin. So we really, really appreciate everybody joining us. If you guys are new, again, hit that subscribe button. You know, we're here all the time. We try to put out shows almost every day, for sure every week. We got at least a few shows on there, and you know, we're actually looking for more people too to do more shows as well. So if you guys, you know, if you're into this stuff, if you're into crypto, if you're into Bitcoin, we would love to talk with you and maybe have you guys do a show over here on the network. We're always trying to bring more information to the people, so that would be great if you guys could help us out with that. I'd just like to thank our 90 plus live viewers. We had over 100 live viewers in there joining us. Really thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. We will be back again, of course, every Sunday at this time. This is about this show and the Crypto Q&A show are the only shows with actual scheduled times, guys. The Bitcoin News Show will be here every Sunday at 12 Pacific, and the Crypto Q&A show is here every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific. And we have much more shows on the channel to come. So thank you guys so much for joining us. Until next time, please keep talking Bitcoin. We'll see you guys later. Bye.